There's some choppiness to some people's audio, but I think we're okay.
There's choppiness?
Choppy.
A little bit of like staticky.
You guys all sound good.
Static.
Sounds fine on my end.
Great.
Or
I'm going to
is
mute
it
for a
me?
second because the tea is almost done.
The tea.
Now I've got the misfits in my head. Static. All right.
You know the rule to audio, right? Is if you hear everyone else is good, it's your fault.
Mhm.
Absolutely true.
It's probably my fault.
Yeah. Are we live?
Yeah,
We are now live.
Yeah, we have been for
All
a
right.
bit.
Let's cue the news music.
All right.
Ryan. No,
It's
not
not us. It's not us. It's not us anymore.
There's music. And it's going to
so
fade out.
talented.
Look at that. We're
I
almost
just have the
professional.
vision of Bo like doing that stuff, like
Yeah.
while the kids are running around and he's on his iPad, making this badass, like electronic music. It's great. So
So he doesn't lose his mind. Yeah.
yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for joining another episode of Black Hills Information Securities talking about news. I want to start out with the story that, everyone keeps talking about all over the place. So this is, it's going to be the story of the year, right? But the feds are now saying that they pinpointed Russia as the likely culprit behind the SolarWinds attack. And what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about attribution. So just kind of the question for everybody, I mean, how exactly do people attribute an attack like this and say, hey, this is absolutely the Russians, or we're pretty sure that this is the Russians?
The malware is all in Russian.
And the malware is all in Russian, right?
Can I use a overused word? Well, the TTPs, which is their tactics, techniques, and procedures, right?
Yep.
And, those are the indicators that, what country or where they could be coming from. Though there's a great argument that says maybe they pretend to be coming from somewhere else, right? Like, throw off the scent. So I think, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like a signature. How they operate, what they use, how this looks like another, what do you call it? Another break-in, like another compromise. Like, how are they together and how do they relate? I think that's where they kind of start drawing these conclusions. So,
Rob?
I would say that if you're talking about feds, or the FBI, they care about the money. So for attribution for them, it's mostly where did the money go for whatever they did for this, right? So you look at the actions on target, you find out what they did to sell or provide, and then you find out where that purchase or that action happened. Because honestly, the most of Russia's TTPs or actions are criminal based, right? They're well, criminal venture based, money based. Whereas with China, it's more about technology and
Intellectual property, things
intellectual property, right? So if they start seeing that it's someone selling access or doing or selling information or that kind of thing, they'll start to focus on it being Russian and or other countries that do similar stuff, like South America countries. And then they'll focus on where that money is going, and then that attribution will come to fruition. There's also, if the NSA is involved, which is what this is saying, that it's the joint venture, what is it called? The joint venture, like output, the report they put out.
Task force?
Yeah, so the NSA was involved in that. So if it's the NSA also saying that it was Russia, then those types of people will have more information on like internal access to other countries. So they'll look at the wiki for the Russian hackers and say, oh, the SolarWinds attack was documented in here, so it's probably Russia, right?
And that's and that last point, I think, is kind of the one that I wanted to talk about. That, you know, attribution, I think, is a lot more difficult than people make it out to be. I mean, you have the whole thing where, like, the CIA vault breach, basically CIA had documentation that said to their operators, hey, you need to try to make your attacks look like another country. And anybody that's in the offensive game and the nation state level should be doing that, right?
Sure.
But then that last point that you made, I think, is the hardest part, because there are actual operations that we have access. I'm just using the United States. We have access to the infrastructure of a lot of these different hacking organizations, as in the NSA, and they can literally see these attacks going down. So now the question is, and just like you were just talking about, Rob, if we're in their network and it's referenced in their wiki, or we're in their network and we're reading their emails or whatever it is they do to communicate with each other, do you actually share that information? Because just saying, yes, we know that this is absolutely associated with the Russians, and here's a whole bunch of TTPs the Russians have. If the Russians see those TTPs are released and the only way someone would know it is if they were sitting on their network, then that will change the behavior of the Russians or the adversary on the other side, because they now know that their network itself is compromised. Right. So this is weird. Sometimes just saying, yeah, we are 100% certain it's the Russians, and here's the reason why, will sometimes never come to the light of day, because they would rather keep that type of int where they're monitoring the adversary's network all the time.
That's why we classify data in certain ways, right? We want to protect how that data was gathered more than just what it is. You know, a lot of times, sometimes that data is not necessarily sensitive, but the fact you have that data is the sensitive piece. Exactly. Because that discloses the fact that there is, you know, a mole or some kind of way, some disconnect there.
So that's like in the Enigma machine, being able to crack that, and then they had to allow certain things to be sunk and destroyed, because if not, then they would have known that we had something that could crack the Enigma machine.
And it was. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, I want to transition the conversation a little bit to, is it important? Who is it important to, right? Like, do I care as a pen tester at BHS that it was Russia that hacked SolarWinds? It's interesting, but do I care? Like, or do you care as the owner of BHS? Do you care as, you know, the owner of, or the president of General Electric or GM? Do you care as, like, who cares about this attribution and why? So I think that there's 2 points of caring, right? One, as an incident responder or a company that is trying to do incident response on this, you care because you want to attribute similar TTPs to other similar TTPs and be able to detect it, right? Because if you know it's Russia, you can say, okay, here's the other Russian actors that I know participate in this kind of stuff. I'm going to monitor that box that I know was popped by SolarWinds for any of the similar TTPs for Russia, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm going to do fuzzy logic on the binaries. I'm going to try, you know, all these different things to associate with a threat actor for that, just so that I can keep watch on it. I think that it is also attribution is also only interesting to the FBI, NSA, and that stuff at that level, right? So, but I think, John, you probably don't care. I mean, you're probably interested, but I don't think you care at the BHS business level.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I care by the nature of what we do, but you know, I think that CEOs care because they're worried that this attack is actually happening on their network. But part of what you're saying is the damage has already been done. It's not like you can do anything right now that'll fundamentally stop this attack from causing damage to your organization. If they wanted to hurt you, that's already done. So I think that that's interesting because, yeah, I care by the nature of BHIS, but then it gets into kind of the other side of that question is, should CEOs necessarily care about attribution? And I don't think that it matters much in this attack from the TTPs to say we need to stop them from, you know, infiltrating the update process of our other vendors. I don't think that that's necessarily possible. That's something that's outside of their control. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So as a CEO, how much time would you put into attribution for this attack? Like, how many man hours would you put into, say, I want to know who did it? Not like TTPs, not not talking that kind of level. I'm not talking. Saying, you as a CEO, how many man hours would you dedicate to finding out the actual attribution? That's where I have a problem with attribution, right?
And I think you're right, because what's the outcome on the other side of that?
Yeah.
Let's say you do attribute it. Then
What about with cyber insurance, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
we were talking about
The
that.
company might care who did it. Now, I mean, that might be the only time that I can think of where it'd be a good example, right?
But it isn't an only time. I mean, that's not like an edge case. I mean, if you look at what happened in Ukraine with Mondelez, whenever Mondelez was hit by NotPetya, they went to fill out an insurance claim, and their insurance company basically denied them because they said this was an act of war. So that attribution does absolutely matter if you're going to go and file an insurance claim from an attack, because then the insurance company can say, well, this is Russia trying to attack and gain access to the United States infrastructure at DoD or financial institutions. You were hit as kind of a
casualty.
backfire. Yeah, you're a casualty, and that is something that's not covered. So that's why it's important, if you're worried about that as a CEO, CFO, CIO, you need to go back and you need to say, okay, does our insurance state act of war, or does it say act of declared war? Because those two things are very, very different. Act of war can be up to for interpretation. Declared war, not so much. So once again, going back to Rob's question, from a CEO, you do care about the attribution, but are you the one that's going to be going through the effort to try to get that attribution? It probably has low value.
If it's your insurance, and that's one of the things that insurance looks at. Yeah, I've never heard that before, so it's very interesting to me that's something that you would do for cyber insurance, is get attribution.
I don't think if I was a CEO of a company that I would go through the effort to get attribution and say, it's the Russians. Our insurance company is not going to cover this. You wouldn't do that, right?
So if someone burned down my house, like someone came here, burned down my house, and then I didn't know who it was.
Don't do that, internet.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. But do I need to get attribution before I file the insurance claim? And if I do get attribution and I find out that someone from Russia came over and burned down my house for some whatever reason, can I? Does this work? Does this fit?
Yes, it actually transfers. So if you're looking at that example of somebody burning down your house, you can file an insurance claim, right? However, if your house gets burned down due to a forest fire, then your insurance company may not cover that, because that would be force majeure. That would be an act of God at that point. And there are stipulations in your insurance for flood and fire, things that they don't cover. So they basically, that cyber liability insurance, they look at Russia hacking as though it's a force of God. It's a force of nature that it could be unforeseeable, and there's no way an insurance company can cover. So that's cheery, I guess. I'm sorry. I feel bad about that one. That one ended on a bad note. How about this one? Hackers using a fake Trump scandal video to spread malware. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is, holy crap, nothing's changed since the Anacornicova virus.
They're using a jar file?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's right.
Is it signed?
Anacornicova virus. Yeah.
It's basically. Oh, go ahead. What's that?
Oh, no, I was just saying, I was asking if it got him too, that virus.
I was just going to say that kept me from doing anything on the internet for many years.
I learned my lesson. I don't click on those links.
Yeah, I'm done.
No, I remember when Anacornicova hit, I was working at Department of Interior with Accenture, and my manager at the time, he had clearly clicked it because I had something like 67 emails from him that were like Anacornicova naked, Anacornicova naked. And, I went over to his cubicle. I'm like, dude, why did you click it? You had like 50 in your inbox. And he's like, I don't know why I clicked it. I'm like, I know why you clicked it. He's like, I knew it was a bad idea and I clicked it anyway. I've got a problem. But
come on. Everyone's curious. Like, that's not...
Yeah, right. Everyone. It's like, maybe this is the PP tape, right? It's like, it's just like this is like the polar opposite of the SolarWinds. The SolarWinds attack was elegant. The code that they injected was amazing, and this one's like sex scandal tape, and people like can't click that crap fast. Is there an automated button that'll click those things faster for me?
I need a bot.
I want to know what email allows a freaking jar file to be sent. That because I want to actually start using that. Like,
that will be my provider. Yes, perfect.
right. I need that provider that allows a jar file to be transferred correctly on an email.
I'm willing to bet you had to click something to download the jar file. That's what I'm. But still, what the hell? How is that like still? That's
and
still a
browser.
thing?
Okay, so browsers automatically any non-signed jar file automatically block and say is possibly malicious. Any modern browser, so Edge, Chrome, Firefox. So they had to not only click a link in an email. They had to go to the site, but download it, and then say approve this possibly malicious jar file unless it was signed.
In addition, though, doesn't Java have a policy about connecting to unknown that you have to add an exception in there? Like, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, but you have to have an updated version of Java to do that, and that's
okay. Assuming we got some outdated versions out there, right? That's probably totally fair.
If you go to java.com, you still download 1.8 for that's like you have to work to install Java 11 and that kind of stuff.
I mean, you have to really want to see Trump naked, which is once again is just horrifying.
Didn't someone actually make a nude statue of him at some point? So like if you were in Chicago at that time, you had that already.
I think there's been multiple Trump naked things out there, unfortunately.
Great.
Yeah, great. It's like, which one? I don't know.
I love the metrics of how successful that was.
Wait, what? What was it? I didn't see it.
Yeah, what did you see for the metrics on that, Rob?
No, I said I would love to see what they were. I didn't get to see them. I'm just so curious to see how many clicks,
It's going to be 20%. It's like spearfishing.
Wait. How many votes did Trump get? 70 million. There you go. Yeah, that's how many clicks
that's how many clicks he got.
Yeah. But it's all sides, right? Like the people that love Trump, the possibility of seeing him naked, and the people that hate Trump, it's like, this is finally the scandal we've been waiting for.
So you got 140 million.
For the last 2 weeks, folks. This is it. The next one I wanted to talk about is Ticketmaster to pay $10 million fine for hacking a rival company.
Did they hire a pen testing company to do a pen test for the other company?
I'll recuse myself from this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So Movix is out, and whenever we're wrong, Ralph, and when we're talking about this, he's gonna groan. Like we'll be like, I'm sure what happened here was they had their own internal pen tester, and Rob's gonna be like, no, they hired an external firm. They hired a security team out of Italy.
Hacking team.
All right, we're heading in the right direction. I don't know. But who the hell thought this was a good idea? Like
many companies. Many companies.
I know, but I still come back to like, what is that conversation like in the C-O boardroom when they're smoking cigars and drinking brandy? It's like, we should hack into our competitor. I'm sure there's no downside to that.
Corporate espionage has been a thing before cyber, so like
true. It's just another iteration, right? It's just another tool, right?
This is like walking into a grocery store if you have your product on the shelf and you're just seeing what the other product's doing. Is that the same?
Totally different. Yeah.
Totally different.
No.
And I'll tell you how this conversation goes in the CEO boardroom. Hey, do you want to find out what the other guys are doing better than us on this XYZ thing? Yes, we do. Definitely, we want to find out.
We will take that.
And the board goes, okay, I'll take care of it.
So, but
that's how that conversation goes.
But here's where it goes sideways for Ticketmaster. I've got it highlighted right here. It says further, Ticketmaster employees brazenly held a division-wide summit at which the stolen passwords were used to access the victim's company computers as if it were an appropriate business tactic. Like, I can see like the dudes in suits smoking cigars.
So you're saying they should have been secretive about it. Got it.
But this is just like so brazen. I think of this as like this this division-wide summit is like something out of Shark Tank or the Wolf of Wall Street, where they have like midgets with like sparklers and all this stuff. Because everyone in the room is like, this is all a good idea, right? There's no way this will come crashing down.
I have a defense. I have a defense for Ticketmaster.
Okay, what's it?
All right, so one of my favorite Deadpool comics of all time. This guy says, "Hey Deadpool, I need you to take care of my wife," and he's like, "Kill your wife, got it." And he's like, "No, I don't want you to kill my wife." He's like, "Don't kill your wife, got it." And he's like, I'm 100% telling you right now, do not kill my wife. He's like, and so maybe the C-suite was like, "Do not hack our competitors." And they're like, got it.
The bear is sticky. Got it.
Got it. We will not do this.
Yeah.
So when I was getting my clearance, if you've ever gotten a clearance at all, it depends on what level of clearance you're getting. But I had the type where they were going through and they were investigating my family and my friends. And, for the last 10 years, every place I lived, they went and they talked to people that were near me. And my absolute best friend in the world is an absolute crazy conspiracy theorist. Like, he smoked something in high school and I clearly wasn't at that party, but the dude is a huge conspiracy theorist. And whenever he got a call, I think it was the Air Force that was doing my investigation. They said, "Do you know John Strand?" And he's like, "Yes." "Great. We need to talk to you. He's going for a clearance." He called me up and it was that exact same conversation. He's like, "Hey, John, I just want to let you know, I just got a call from the Air Force about your clearance. They're coming to interview me. Don't have to worry about a thing, buddy. I got you covered." I'm like,
Wow.
"Tell them the truth about everything." And he's like, "Yes, I got it.
I got
Everything." Yes. And when I talked to the investigator when it was over, he was like, "Yeah, we spent 2 days talking to your friend. The dude was like amazing. Like they just hung out with him." And they're like, "Yeah, his conspiracy theories were insane." And I'm like, "Well, was it anything useful for mine?" And he's like, "No, we couldn't trust anything that he said."
Maybe their defense is like,
chat
we didn't
makes
know.
a good point here. There's got Dusty makes a comment that says 10 million is just a slap on the wrist.
It is.
What if the company's looking at this ahead of time and saying $10 million? We can afford that. That's
We can afford it.
effort. Let's just
And
go
depends
for
on
it.
what they got out of it too.
That's
That
absolutely
technology might be worth more than 10 million.
Well, and I wonder for like the executives or the people that signed off on this, like, does everybody, I hate that I'm asking this question because I know the answer. Did they all get off scot-free? Like, no, it's cool that you authorized this. We just paid the $10 million fine. We're cool.
But what about like just the integrity of their name for just the common person that sees
Well,
this?
it's
that's
Ticketmaster.
really
I mean,
This is Ticketmaster,
They
so
already don't have
relevant.
not relevant.
No.
not relevant.
Which is sad, right?
Yes.
Oh.
But if you want to go to the concert and they were the only ones selling the tickets, what were you going to be like? I rip. No.
Oh, yeah.
Well, who's going to concerts right now though? Like it's
Well, no, this was before.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
There was a year. There was a year in the before years.
It was
Sure. before
In the 19th century. Nope, 20th century. I got it wrong.
Yeah, those are good times. Those are great times. I miss them so much.
Good times.
All right. Next story. Healthcare industry witnessed 45% spike in cyber attacks since November 20th. And I think that this directly kind of correlates with us starting this news show. Because this is that ransomware thing that kept coming back again and again. If you remember, it was every episode there was, it's another ransomware attack. It's another ransomware attack. It's another ransomware attack. Well, apparently it wasn't just a hype cycle. Apparently there was a spike in the attacks of 45%. I don't know what to make of this. We've talked about ransomware quite a bit. Now, I wanted to ask you guys, do you think this is kind of a copycat where you started seeing hospitals pay out originally in Germany, and there was one in California and then another one in Pennsylvania, and then it just kind of started exploding from ransomware attacks. Do you think that this is kind of an uptick in the tempo of attacks across the board, and we're just seeing it in hospitals? Or do you think the attackers are focusing on hospitals because they know that there's a higher probability that they'll pay out?
I mean, I think if let's say in the future, there's a limited amount of water, then you're going to see ransomware attacks on water companies. I just think it's this is the important thing, most likely to be paid out. So let's go for that. And in the future, it's going to be whatever the most important thing to humanity is at that point. That's my opinion.
I think
That's horrible. Thanks.
I think they're soft targets.
I'm going to agree with Ralph here. I was going to pivot the conversation or the question onto you go where it's easy, and like medical places unfortunately are not well IT managed, and for the most part there are good ones out there, but like they have better things to do, like saving lives. And I think that I don't hack medical places unless you have permission to, but like they're relatively easy.
Well, and let's talk about why they're easy. They're usually open environments with lots of people having access to IT resources. A lot of the equipment and the infrastructure, if you're talking about IoT devices, you're not a lot of them, they can't patch and update them very easily. Some of them, there's not even patches available. It's very expensive equipment to actually replace. You have a user population in the form of doctors and healthcare workers that push back against any security implementation. Because like Rob said, they're trying to save lives. Like, it's like, no, you got to use your two-factor authentication PIN, and you got to type your password that's 17 characters long before you can log in. It's like, this guy's in cardiac arrest. We need to get in right now. So I do think they're just absolutely like soft targets, and it's not because they're stupid. It's really because it's just the nature of who they are and what they do.
So what you're saying is, as InfoSec professionals, we got to do better to make it easier for them.
You know, I always said if you're a bad InfoSec professional and you die and you go straight to hell, when the elevator doors open, you get to do security at a university or a hospital.
So we were doing the job hunt live stream last night, and when we were talking about companies, this was a college graduate looking. And so do you pick the sexy, like, resume building company, like, as the place that you want to go to? Like, is that where you direct your efforts, or do you pick the company that's most needed for other professionals to come in? And most people, I think, pick the sexy company as their first. And like you just.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I worked at Anderson Consulting and Accenture at the beginning of my career. And I know that they get mad whenever I say this, but during that time, they were a horrible company. They would hire a whole bunch of people out of college with no computer experience whatsoever. And they're like, you're now creating a Java application that's processing $1 billion a month. Go you. That's not the way to live life. Now, I've been told they don't do that anymore. But being like 23, 22 years old and being handed a development job where I'm handling $1 billion a month for accounts receivable, accounts payable, and general ledger, that never happens, right? Like in the real world. And I think it absolutely accelerated my career. The fact that I could stay there for like 5 or 6 years opened up doors for me that wouldn't be open anyplace else. So I always tell people, look, if you get an opportunity to work at a big 5 consulting firm, super sexy marquee name company, take it. Like if you're right out of college, you're dual income, no kids, there's nothing that's going to accelerate your career faster. Wow, that just killed the conversation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's definitely a good idea. And read the room.
Also, does that also keep talent away from places like the hospitals and stuff that need it?
Yeah, but the hospitals need more experienced people so
I agree.
Like John was saying, every doctor is basically a CEO, right? You have to, and if you're trying to put Joe, the right out of college pen tester in front of that doctor, he's going to get smashed every single time.
Yeah.
And that bravado from being fresh out of college and the bravado of being a doctor is going to come to heads, and you're going to have a really hard first couple of years, right? If you make it through. And so like having the experience to know how to have that conversation with people who are not technical or not technical in your space is what is required for hospitals. But the problem there is that like most people who are highly technical or know that space and know how to have that conversation don't want to jump into the fire of hospitals, right? So like there's your catch-22.
Well, and Rob, this kind of reminds me of a presentation I saw you give at a CCDC competition years ago. We were all up on stage, and the kids were all asking us questions like, "What's the most important thing?" And I think you were on the right of the stage, and they asked you, "What do you think is the most important thing for us for trying to forward our career?" And you said outright, "It's like communication, being able to effectively communicate with people." Because if you remember, like the recorded scenes where the students would go in and talk to the CEO, and they were horrible, right? I mean, they were really bad, and there was a handful of people that were really good at that. And your point was, don't ignore that skill set, because that's the skill set that's going to move your career faster than knowing technical things. And it was awesome watching the audience while you were answering that. There was a bunch of people that were taking notes, and you could see their like hope just left them. They're like, talk to people.
Yeah. And but what was great was like the professors and the mentors in the room were like, uh-huh.
They knew.
Yeah, none of you do this.
None of you at all. And it was, I don't know, it was interesting how like a lot of the teams that were the least technical teams did far better in the executive communication. Now, a lot of them were just talking out their butts, but they may not have had the technical skills, but boy, could they put lipstick on a pig and explaining the whole hack and everything to the executive. They did a much better job than a lot of other teams for sure.
Oh yeah. I have seen amazing communicators come through CCDC, and they're the team leads, and the people who do that usually are the less technical ones. Not always, but usually. And like they get, since I'm part of the white team at Mid-Atlantic, I've seen the scoring, and like you can see where the people who are super technical but have no communication, their injects, their business side of that thing just falls apart. And like, and it goes to team leadership, it goes to communication with the CEO, like all of that. And you can see where their scores are fantastic in like services up times and all that stuff. And then their inject score is like 0. And like they get mid range at the end of the competition, and they're like, we had our services online the entire time, but we lost. How did that happen?
Yeah, welcome to the real world, right? And I fully, completely believe that that's why my career trajectory is I was good at explaining security. I've had people sometimes say, "Well, John's like a pen test genius." No, I'm not. I'm not even a mediocre pen tester at best. I was lucky, but you know, the ability to get in front of a room and communicate computer security concepts. That's what actually furthered me more than anything else. And I think that's, once again, a lot of the technical people that are in this industry, they have a really hard time wrapping their head around that. And I think that there's some jealousy and some resentment, and they kind of need to get over it. I mean, there's lots of opportunities for people to present. You know, there's lots of groups like Toastmaster. There's lots of security organizations where you can get up and talk about things. And you got to learn to communicate effectively. Because if you're working in a hospital, you can actually talk to doctors and you can convince them to do the right thing. But I think so many people think that, well, here's the right thing, and immediately everyone's going to glom onto that and agree with you. You've got to frame it in such a way that it is digestible for a non-technical audience. And a lot of people, if you just show up and you start talking bits and bytes, they hate you right out of the gate. Yeah. IT Crowd was not a comedy. That TV show was a documentary.
I am 15 years into my career, and I am still working on it. Like, I'm still working on that, exactly what you said, like getting better at communication, having that empathy, having that knowing where and when to push and where and when to back off. It's an ongoing skill, I think, that everyone has to work on.
But dude, years ago when we first started talking about this, you always talked about it as you did this initially to start presenting, to get outside of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, it's like you saw something that was lacking, and you're like, no, I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to go and kick this thing straight in the teeth, and you just kept doing it. And I think that a lot of people need to understand that if you saw me present 17 years ago at the SANS Institute, it's not who I am today. It's this constant growth process, and it's always going to be that way. All right, those are the stories that I have. Do you guys have anything else? So.
Yeah. That's it for the news, I think,
All right.
for today. All right, Ryan, lead us out with music,
All right.
or do I do the
I can
thing?
hit the music. You can do both.
All right, everyone, thanks for joining us to do the news.
There you go.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Kill it with fire, Ryan. Kill it.
Fire! Nuke from orbit.
You mean like SolarWinds? Wait, I didn't know we ran SolarWinds.
So my wife had a question for me. She said, should I be